like to give a very special thank you to Ms. Young Eleanor Goodman. Wasn't that a spectacular message? Now, Ms. Goodman, I'm a little older than you, and you'd be younger than my youngest child. I can't hear too many rap lyrics. I catch about every third one that they say, but I felt everything you said. To Sheriff Coleman, God bless you. Thank you for always coming out and being a part. Sheriff Coleman's son, Philip, a dear friend of ours and mine personally, and his other son, Jeff. Here's a sheriff that's coming out of retirement to stay on the field because he knows what court-monitored supervision should look like versus slave catching. He wants to make a difference. And he experienced a pain that many of us cannot even imagine. Videotaped on high-def resolution. Here's a sheriff whose son was having a mental breakdown, like we all can go through something at some time. And he knew the procedures to call the police to help restrain his son so that he could go to the hospital. They took him out of the hospital. They took him from his house to the hospital, to the police station where they killed his son on video. We pray for you, Sheriff Coleman, and stay strong, and we appreciate your service. Our past president, Reverend Jimmy Daniels, always an honor and a delight to see you here. I'd also say a very special thank you for all of you that have come out today. On this Mother's Day, and I'm going to make 3 points on Mother's Day. The first point will be, and you can look in the book of Lamel, chapter 31st book, and the book of Proverbs. I want you to say, number one, for all the mothers, keep your children first. The second point I'm going to make would be, is have a philosophy of love in raising your children. And the third part is to keep God first. What do I mean? As I think back, Reverend Wilson, over having had the privilege, the pleasure of knowing my great-grandmother, Matilda Burns, who could not read. I was coming home from elementary school, and this is in the 70s, and you're so excited to feel that someone called you at home. Some young people don't understand because you have your own cell phone. But if you had a phone call at home, your own message, that was big stuff. So I get to the house, and it's an ordinary day. And then someone at school the following day asked me, why didn't you return my call? I called you. I didn't know anything about it. So my great-grandmother Matilda was staying at our house for the summer. And even if she had nothing else to do, having gotten up early, having made breakfast, having swept outside all around the house, she couldn't read, but she was not idle. That's a message in there. She couldn't read, so she didn't see the newspaper. She didn't look at television all day because she knew it was a bunch of foolishness, but she was not idle. By the time we came home, all the dishes were clean. All the sheets had been washed. She had pride. My great-grandmother didn't have much, but she had her pride, and her dignity was in place. And so after I asked my great-grandmother, and I was upset, someone said they called me and I didn't receive the message. She says, oh, I forgot about that. And I was instinctively had a knee-jerk wanting to ask her, why didn't you write down the message? And then I caught myself realizing that my grandmother couldn't write. Brothers and sisters, we've come a mighty long way and we have miles to go. But to see that same great-grandmother be able to vote for the very first time in her life for my father, I know that God is truly walking with us. To see my grandmother, Helen, who died just 2 years ago, that always had a Bible by the side of her bed. She didn't read 1,000 books, but she read one book over 1,000 times. And she wanted to make sure our hands were planted in the scriptures. Having been a teenage mother and life didn't serve her the way she thought it did, she never gave up. Kept her family together, raised my father, raised my Uncle Chuck. and never doubted God's word. I've seen it with my own eyes. Having been a beautician and worked all day long, and when she would come home in the evenings in the summertime and we sat there, we would take the corns off of her feet, having to shave them very gently with a razor so that she wouldn't hop and skip so much before she made us dinner. I've seen it with my own eyes. To see my grandmother Gertrude, who was an orphan at 12 years of age, and to have a child at 14. She didn't believe too much in scriptures. She didn't understand that. She saw the church having exploited people and other people being fooled, but she knew there was a God. She just couldn't get into church. I didn't have many ambitions to go to college, but she was in her GED program at the age of 55, having worked at the VA in the hospital her entire years in life. And the Lord blessed us in 1988. She graduated from Hampton University with a bachelor's, and my brother Jesse Jr. and I graduated from North Carolina A&T the same year. Then she went on to get her master's at 65. She said she always wanted an education. And I remember one of the last stories that she told me is that Miss Johnson, my father was traveling and he was at an event with Miss Johnson, one of the women in Hidden Figures. She was receiving an award. And Miss Johnson asked about Gertrude Brown. And my father was astonished. How do you know my wife's mother, Gertrude? She says we were neighbors in Norfolk and Newport News, Virginia. They grew up in the same part of town. Many of these women had limited options for their career, for their life. But they had a pride, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, young people, that somehow we can't give up on and we have to maintain. When I see these things now on Facebook, and if Facebook has standards and censorship, they need to stop promoting all this fighting and all this violence that you see with all these young ladies and young men fighting. Putting your child first, what does that mean? That means when I went to spend the summers in Hampton, Virginia with my grandmother, Gertrude, having worked the early shift in the VA, in the commissary, and in the kitchen, having served people's food all day long. When she came back to the house, she made food for us. Having grown up in deep poverty in Florida, not knowing her mother and her father, having been a teenage mother at the age of 14, she had an aversion to the smell, to the stench of poverty. Not having money, we had plenty of bleach in that house and plenty of soap in that house and plenty of washing detergent. I didn't understand why she washed our sheets every day. That was her luxury to have clean sheets. Ladies, put your children first. A child can have their head combed, their teeth brushed, their pants washed. I'm talking. You're not that poor. There are resources available to have your child presentable. Put your child first. We saw what's happening in Homewood, Flossmoor, a school district that's 70 to 80% African American, and the school board is predominantly Caucasian, Reverend Daniels. And the children are getting expelled and having detentions, and the parents are upset. And then I asked some of the parents, Brother Teddy and Sonia, I asked them, well, why haven't you run for school board? And someone tells me, you know, I work hard all week. It's the end of the week. Oh, my goodness, what else can you do? I said, it's your child. Put your child first. They said, I have to go now. You put something on my mind. Can you complain about a system that you can participate in, that you can control for the upbringing of the government of your own child, and you don't do it? Am I supposed to think more about your child than you think about yours? I have parents come to me every week, like Reverend Wilson, and they want to catch you out in the street and say, Brother Jackson, look into this. My child has this problem. I said, well, thank you. I'll be sure to. But can you come by push Rainbow Push on Saturday. Here we are in Chicago, 930 East 50th Street. I'm a volunteer here. Why don't you come so we can be a part of a community, so we can be a part of a collective action, so we can go forward and have some power, so we can make a difference in your child's life. Well, they say on Saturday morning, I got to take my clothes to the cleaner. I got to pick up my grandchild. I got to get my nails done. I got to get my hair done. I've worked all week. I need to sleep. When do you stand up and fight for yourself? You need to turn that health club membership in that you're not using, make a contribution to a civil rights organization, and raise up our children so they understand how to have some pride. The lessons to be learned on putting your children first. And if you don't have children, in this last February, I had the opportunity to stand in on behalf of my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, to go to India to be a part of the 150th birthday celebration to commemorate the life of the Mahatma Gandhi. And while there in Calcutta, I went by the orphanage that was headed by Mother Teresa. And can't help but think of this noble soul that had no children of her own, that raised thousands of children, that felt a calling. What do I mean by that? And I want you to get a lesson from there. Ladies and gentlemen, one day we're going to be old. I used to think life was cruel and children were mean when they didn't go by the hospital and the senior citizens' homes and the nursing homes to visit the old and the sick and the shut-in. Well, I got another side to that theory now, Reverend Bonds. If you've not been a part of a child's life growing up, they're not going to miss you when you get old. I know that ought to hurt and sting. So while you still have the time and you have the breath and you have the energy, go reach out to a child and make them a part of your life. Mother Teresa has an orphanage there that still goes on after she's gone. People would get the children that had their bodies mangled and damaged and had the multiple sclerosis and had all sort of child issues that didn't want their children. They left them at her doorstep. And she found the opportunity to care for them. And now her name lives on. She put children first. The second point I want to make is having a loving philosophy about your children. What does that mean? Children aren't meant to be cursed out. You're not supposed to take a flower out of a pot, look at it, hit it, and then stick it back in there and keep trying to repot it. Children need love. Children need nurturing. Children need caring. Before you discipline your child, before you talk at your child, have a philosophy of love. Figure out where is the end going to be. Would I have damaged them? Would they never want to come back to me? Where they now want to have friends out in the street because they don't think they can talk to me? Am I so self-centered because I've had a bad day? I don't care about the infliction of the pain and the words that I use to cut and scar my child. No. Your child ain't a little B. Your child ain't a little N. Your child can't listen to the music that you like. I saw a child on just the Facebook the other day twerking and turning, and the mother was sitting there. You can already see that child's going to be pregnant not very long from now. Little child twerking and turning, and the mama like it, and Nene like it, and Ma Dia ain't saying nothing. So happy Mother's Day to some, happy Ma Dia Day to others, and happy Get Yours and Live Your Best Life to others. A loving philosophy, what does it mean? It means going to your child's bedroom and praying with your child at night. Having a loving philosophy, it means you'll be the first one that your child turns to because they know that you have loving protection and arms around them, Reverend Wilson. Your young boys aren't looking for the gangs to give them love and validation. Having a loving philosophy around your child. I know a mother that to this very day, and her children are grown, if she goes into her child's bedroom while he's sleeping at over 20 years old, and she puts her finger in the child's hand, the child will begin to embrace it. She talked to her child. She didn't have a father in the household, but she had respect for that child to give to his father. I know it's Mother's Day, but none of us come without a father. And I know there are some women that do it all, and some fathers that haven't paid child support. They're not involved in the child's life. There's a solution for that. Find a church and let a minister help you raise that boy. Find a coach to let that man be a part of that young boy's life. You're not a mother and a father. Happy Mother's Day, but you're not both. And us men that were raised with other men, we can see a child, we can see a man, a young boy that didn't have a father in his life. Having a loving philosophy. Letting your child know that no matter what they've done, they're redeemable. Somebody's mother today is a prostitute. The Bible tells us to honor our mother and our father. Don't judge your mother. Don't give up on her. Somebody's mother today is in Cook County Jail. Don't give up on your mother. Somebody knows where their mother is and their mother doesn't have the strength to reach out to them. Go visit your mother. Don't give up on your mom. You only have one. I remember being with Brother Tupac Shakur. And he was working as a teenager, giving money back to his mother. And when he heard his mother was back out in the street doing illegal and illicit things that were embarrassing to him, he says on that day, his lyrics changed in his music, and that's when women became bitches and whores. He was hurt. Women, put your child first. Have a loving philosophy. Don't bring all these men around your babies. It's embarrassing to the children. And he ain't little man. And everybody know that ain't just your special friend. And in closing, put God first. What does God first mean? And all three of these tie together on your children first, loving philosophy, and putting God first. Children are a gift through us. They're not ours. They were granted to us for our share, for our keeping, for our nurturing, for our development. One day we're going to be gone, but we want our children to have something to hang on to that's bigger than us. Put God first. They need to come to push for a civics classroom to be good citizens. They need to go to Sunday school for a good character education. They need to go to school Monday through Friday so they can have a good intellectual education. But being intellectual is not going to be enough. You're going to have to be civically engaged. You're going to have to be spiritually fortified. And you're going to have to be intelligent. When I say you put God first, how do you make a 0 to a 10? It's got to be something bigger than you. How do you walk children through the process? I tell you what I've tried to do. Take children into the wonderment of life. Ask your children, where does food come from? They're going to say from the refrigerator. And then if they get deep, they're going to say from the car trunk. They didn't go to the grocery store. And then if they're really, really smart, they're going to say they came from the grocery store and the farm. But then take them one step further. Ask them how many days does it take for corn to grow? And it's going to take 110 days. And how much sunlight does it need? And what is the process of photosynthesis? And who creates the sun to give the nutrients of the light to make the food grow? Teach your children about the wonderment of life, the miracle of breast milk. How is it blood on one side that can be transformed into milk on the other side? Only God can do that. Teach your children about the wonderment of life so they stop seeing themselves as the biggest and the most important and being so narcissistic where they think they're the end-all, be-all of everything, acting like nothing has ever been here before. There are no new sins, Reverend Daniels. They're just some new sinners. Young people, you're going to see all the same thing that we've ever seen before. You may do it on Snapchat, FaceTime, Instagram. You may do it with a YouTube video. It's the same sin. In closing, I want to thank God for the life of Phyllis Wheatley, the first young American to have been manumitted from slavery. She was 7 or 8 years old, a young girl, kidnapped from West Africa that had to go stand before George Washington and Ben Franklin, the founding fathers, to prove that she was human enough to be free. I want to thank God for the life of Venus Serengenta, a young South African girl that was kidnapped, that they said had steatopedia, that her behind was very large, and they kidnapped her and put her in a circus in Europe. And this is where the mythology comes from, that black women are loose and have white livers and are highly sexualized. And it wasn't until Mandela was president that they even returned her bones back to South Africa for it to be properly buried. So all this twerking and all this degradation of our women and our girls, we can clean that up. When we hear about Reverend Spencer Leak talking about the Nehemiah Project and building the walls, think about that. An undertaker, a funeral director, is preaching life. He doesn't want to bury you. The undertaker don't want you. He knows there are too many young people filling up his parlors all weekend long. So he's telling us, promote the Nehemiah Project. Let's rebuild the walls of character, of integrity, of discipline, of valor, of character within our own community. Happy Mother's Day to you all. God bless you.